For me, the power of story is story is how we know ourselves. We know ourselves, who we are, by stories that we tell about ourselves. Many of them learned when we were quite young.
I think of human civilization before writing and reading stuff. How did society pass down its histories and its values and standards and expectations for behavior? It was through story.
Well, my mom, like our relationship, we're very close, but she's sort of like a reserved person. So her way of like teaching me and telling me like her story wouldn't be so much in detail unless I try to get it out of her. But she leaves me with different quotes. Like, it's one thing that has stuck with me since like forever. She says, people come in your life to either teach you, treat you, or beat you. And learning that has taught me like so much when it comes to meeting people and, you know, just interacting with people and not taking too many things to like, not really worry too much about certain things that people do to you.
Well, my father used to say that there is just 1 inch in between good and bad. The difference in between good and bad was just 1 inch. It's just really small gap in between being good and being bad. And he used to tell, who will stop you if you grab a piece of wood? Who's the one who stop you in order to, you know, when you're about to hit someone? Who stopped you to do that? Because there is a really small gap in between do something or not, and who is telling you not to do it.
As a Head Start child, I remember my Head Start class was relatively small, or I only remember a few of my classmates. One of my classmates had his mom would comb his hair, and I distinctly remember the ingredient that he would use in his hair or something had a particular scent or an odor that wasn't too pleasant. And you know, there was like 6 of us in the class, 8 of us in the class, so the kids would make gestures about it or comments about it, and I didn't make comments because it was like I did think even then it wasn't a good idea. But I remember talking to my mom about it. She would tell me, but that's not your problem. You still be nice to people. So we had a lengthy conversation on that. Eventually, I remember going back to school next day or a couple of days later and talking to Larry and telling him, my mom said I had to be your friend even though your hair smells. I've come back to that situation time and time again where for whatever given reason, whatever the situation that it may cause, you have to go back to doing the right thing.
You know, my father was one of those, like, he could depict anything like Garcia Marquez does in the books, you know? He could make some depiction of something. Even if I wasn't looking at it, I could see it in my brain, you know? I could get the picture. I remember all those things that my father used to experience, and he kind of passed it, you know, in the generation they went through us. And he was an amazing person. And I think I have a lot of things from him that I got, the good things that he used to talk about, you know, justice and being nice, being good.
As we understand the stories that each of our clients have to tell about their own lives, as we remember that each of us has stories as well about ourselves, I think it brings humanity back to our mission. Everybody here at Volunteers of America comes to work with a smile on our face and a big heart. We want to serve our clients. As we remember what their stories are all about, and as we get in touch with their stories, and as we see how their stories will change and evolve into something better over time, I think we can remember that the real purpose of Volunteers of America is serve the people who are our clients.
The first story that hit me the most profoundly, I think, was the story of Leslie, one of our Girls Advisory Board members, longtime Girls Inc. member, who wrote a poem about her best friend. And the story, Leslie's story, is about being in a car with her friend. Leslie grew up in East Los Angeles. Was riding in the car, very innocent. And the next thing she knew, her friend was murdered by a stray gunshot. And she's sitting next to her best friend in the entire world, who literally dies in her arms. And Leslie cradles her friend until help arrives. And I'm touched by Leslie's resiliency and her ability to work through it. And she's since become a poet as a way to heal and as a way to, in some way, empower other young women with her own story.
So the resilient kids that we see succeeding against all odds aren't the exception, they're the rule. And why is it that they're resilient? For some reason, they're telling themselves stories about themselves that are positive.
Every person has a story. Every person has many stories. And I think good story listeners are the ones who can help the storyteller to better understand the context for why the story is being told in a certain way. You know, it's like a glass is half full or a glass is half empty. We'll hear stories from people and it sounds like life for that person is a glass is half empty kind of life. But an optimistic listener can also see positive aspects of that story and help the client to see the positive parts of it and see, hey, yeah, I know you've got a rough story here, but by the way, here are some possibilities that can evolve from that glass is half empty story, and it will soon be a glass is half full story with more and better things to come for the future. I think we as VOA Los Angeles staff and volunteers can become optimistic listeners to our clients' stories and find other merits in those stories that can help the client to have a better life.
I think the other triggering mechanism with the power of story is most people don't think their stories are worthy of telling. And just the concept of inviting somebody to tell his or her story, and it might be a 2-year-old right here in this room, or again, it might be a veteran just coming back from Iraq, or a youngster living in chaos in the midst of gangs and tragedies in inner city Los Angeles. Just for them to have that insight, somebody wants to listen to my story, is in and of itself enlivening. And it begins to shift the play, if you will, from one of, well, this is unimportant and stupid and futile, and how many ways does society have to tell people, well, if you're not rich and if you're not living in a beach house in Malibu and you're not driving this car or going to that club, you're not worth very much. All that gets contradicted, where all of a sudden every life has such significance and importance, and especially for the storyteller.